We're drilling down in this chapter to best understand the diversified workforce that we have to understand and work in our careers, and understand that globalization and cultures are at work today, and we have to play our part to be a better communicator. From Starbucks to Burger King, companies large and small have overseas ownership and influence. And through the details in Chapter 3, and the assignments in this chapter as well, and our special guest speaker will understand how culture plays a part in the business world. From immigration to companies owned by overseas entities, our workforce is very diverse. That can be an excellent thing because we have many different cultures in play, people bringing different ideas and intelligence as well as their experience to the table when they're working in teams and throughout their company. Culture is something that we learn. It's not something that comes naturally. And cultures are logical, dynamic, and it's how we identify ourselves as well as the communities in which we live in many cases. There are things that are very obvious and things in culture that are not so obvious. Culture is high and low context. That has to do with how you look at time, as well as how individuals and groups are viewed and how you communicate. Also, power distance is something that plays into culture as well. Low context cultures are very specific. They're action-oriented. Let's do this. Let's get it done on this timeline. Very logical. And they also are very explicit. They're objective, professional, and very efficient. High context cultures are more relational. What kind of relationship are you having in that situation? And very sort of, I call it chin rubbing, contemplative. There is a lot of perhaps body language or intuition that is left to your imagination. Sometimes the body language as well as gestures, a look on a face, or maybe an eye roll that can play into a high context culture situation. And as we see here are the different nations and how they are viewed. High context cultures in the business world include Japanese, Arab, Latin American, Spanish, and then as we move down that line, it gets more low context in English, Italian, French, North American, that includes the United States, Scandinavian, German, and Swiss at the bottom in the low context category. You'll see here the differences in low context and high context cultures in terms of individualism and how people work together in a team or a group. And you can read more about this in the Chapter 3 material, and we'll hear some of this from our guest speaker coming up. Power distance has to do with how powerful members distribute the power in their organization, and you'll read about that as well. Here's a quick explanation. High power distance countries and the people below the leadership level expect formal organizations, and they will do what they're told, so to speak. Low power distance countries, the subordinates, the people under the leadership consider themselves equal to their supervisor. So that's quite different. And now we introduce Doug Breskin with us today. He's the key accounts manager at a company called Nelson-Miller. They're a supplier of product identification and user interface solutions. He's been with the company in its many iterations from 1990 through now. Doug brings to us today examples of intercultural communication, as well as a bit of how he works well in those situations, and he works generally remotely.